Hello, everyone. Welcome to another ODNT Spotlight. My name is Steve DeWinter, your host, and I have with us a really great guest today. His name is Eddy Decker, and he is a comic writer and artist, and he has brought with us today his first volume of an entire series called Far Out. And I've read some of these. I've slipped through some of the things. He has it available online, but I guarantee you this is one you're going to want to pick up on paperback now that it's available so that you can sit and read it anywhere and everywhere and share it with your families. And I read it, and it is so funny. This guy, his humor, I get it, and I love it, and he's really, really funny. So let's go ahead and switch on over. Hello, Eddy. Welcome to ODNT
Hello,
Spotlight.
how are you doing today, Steve?
Hey, where we get to shine the spotlight on you.
It looks like it's shining right on me, on my face.
Yes, there you go.
Gosh.
Where were you last Thursday night?
Probably at work.
Yeah. All right. So welcome. So you've brought with you, you are the writer and artist of a comic series called Far Out.
Yes.
And oh, you know what? Let me really quick switch back over. I usually do this. It's been so long. There is the cover of the book.
There we go.
So a Far Out collection by Eddy Decker, and it's called The Eighth Grade. So now let's switch back over now. So tell us a little bit about this comic series.
Sure. So the idea of the comic mainly is to follow four teenage friends, and they're just like all of us were when we were kids. And basically the way that the storyline goes is it is a follow-up story. So it does happen in real time, something that you don't always see in comics or strips.
Right.
But the way that I like to pitch the idea is think of like Charlie Brown or the Archie gang, but if they actually grew up and experienced life differently every year. So it has that kind of family-friendly feel that's good for all ages. It's good to be able to relate to a lot of people simply because every year someone else will be able to relate to them, whether they're of that age or parents want to remember when they were that age or they get to share it with their friends. But basically, it is just a story about life, and it's about four friends that go through it, and they all see it differently and how they interact with each other. But the biggest difference that kind of separates this series from all of the other ones that are similar to it is not only is it good for all ages and very clean and family friendly, but it does actually change every year. Their clothes change every day. Their hairstyles will change. They'll go through different series of life that you and I even went through, just like everybody does. But the biggest thing is it is relatable as it goes on, so they don't just stay 13 years old for 20 years.
Wow, that is interesting. So this is, yeah, because I sit there and I see that when I read the comics. Garfield has changed, but only because the artist is different. Not different, but he has changed as an artist, and so Garfield doesn't look like he did in 1978. He looks, right. But then he's pretty much stayed the same for like a decade or more. Yeah.
And it's kind of the same way with a lot of the popular strips, whether it's, Archie, they're still in high school. They still have a bedtime of 10, 11 o'clock at night, but it's always the same thing. And not that I don't like Archie or Garfield, or those are my favorites, and that's what inspired a lot of this. Right. But I wanted something that when I look at it, I can say, okay, this is what I went through. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But at the same time, what happens in 5 or 10 years? Are they still going to be 13? Is it going to take them 5 years just to get into high school, or am I going to try to do it every year? So that's what it's really about, is getting able to see it in a fresh new way every year. So not only do they change in terms of their physical appearance, but like I said, their clothes change every day, their hairstyles change, their environment changes, new friends are going to come along, they're going to follow under a lot of different scenarios, whether it be good or bad, peer pressure and things like that. So it is something that kids, adults can read together and experience it and kind of relate to it in their own way.
Excellent. So was the first year you started this for them 8th grade?
It is. Originally, if you go all the way back, this idea started back in high school. And only 2 of the main characters were in it, and it was literally a joke that a friend of mine gave an idea to me of back in study hall. And it was literally, hey, you know what we should do? And he gave me this really just very odd idea. It's for the lack of a better word, the Grim Reaper was going to open up a restaurant.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and it literally came out of nowhere. A friend of mine was giving a speech in high school about, I think the name of it was The Count, if I remember right. And it basically follows the story of like a Christmas Carol, but not in the same kind of holiday aspect, but the same style. There's a man who just basically neglects his family and faith in order to achieve more wealth through his business and things like that. And after my friend had sat down, he just kind of turned to me and he said, wouldn't it be funny if the Grim Reaper just opened up like a fast food restaurant and he didn't serve anything but just like death warmed over burgers and stab meals and things like that? And I said, it would be. And he said, we should totally do that. And you can make a comic out of it and we could call it this. And I said, let's do it right now. So we did that
instead of studying in study hall.
Exactly. So in the back of the study hall, we basically came up with this idea, and my drawing was absolutely horrible back then. I could probably show you a picture of one of the original ones. I think it's right here, actually. This is not the recent one, but it's something very similar. If I can show that up on screen.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So very, very bad artwork for the time, at least in my case. And it was something that I just was not used to doing. I never thought of doing comic strips. And, you know, after a while, I kept drawing the same character over and over again because I didn't like to make up new things at the time. And one of those characters actually ended up turning into the main character. He just didn't have a name yet. And we got off of the original idea. And I said, you know, this isn't going very far, and we're going to be graduating within like a couple of years. We're going to have to come up with something different because we did this just for fun in my school for like our little newsletter.
Right.
And basically the people that worked with me on it said, well, why don't we just make it these two characters and we'll give them names? And we kind of brainstormed back and forth, and we decided that we wanted to do like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure type of story. So we came up with the names for them, and I called one of them Nick and the other one Jason. And I said, but let's have them like go back in time. We'll just get rid of the old story. We'll just pretend like that never happened. We'll do a reboot, and we're going to call it Nick and Jason's Far Out Adventures. And they go back in time and they meet all these different people and things. And that's how we ended it. But then after I graduated, people would come back to me and say, you should really do something with that comic. Make more friends, keep going with it, make up a different story, make them to where they get older. That's something that you don't see. You know, they always stay the same for years. So
right.
Just come up with something. So I literally took, it's embarrassing to say, but I took about 10 years coming up with an entire storyline.
Wow.
That I sit and write after school, after work, whatever. And believe it or not, I have literally probably 15 to 20 years of material of what they go through. And I decided just to go ahead and put everything in the first book. I'll start them out at a very relatable age. 13 is what most people can immediately relate to.
It's the first time we become an actual teen.
It is. It's the first year of the
It's significant.
Right. You know, you feel like you have some authority as a teenager, I guess. So I started them out at 13. 8th grade is immediately relatable to a lot of people. It's a year before high school, and it's the last year that you really get to goof off, I think.
Right. And you're up on top because you're at the top of the middle school or junior high.
Right. And that's not to say that maybe in the future, you know, there might be what happened to the 1st through 7th grade, but I wanted to have something immediately relatable. So the 8th grade is where I started. I literally pulled all of my old comics that I made out of my filing cabinet, and I looked at how I wanted the schools to look, how I wanted the story to develop. I have old sketches of the other two characters that I included in the group. And I finally had to come up with names for everything. So I said, I want to keep the name Far Out from Far Out Adventures as a little bit of an homage. And of course, when you go to trademark all that, everything has Far Out in it. I found a Far Out fishing company. I found a Far Out studio, but nobody had a Far Out comic strip. So I went ahead and just I paid the fee, and I crossed my fingers and I said, please let me have this because it's the only thing I have left. And within, I think, 9 months to the day just before Christmas, they sent me my certification and said, you got it. So I went forward with it and I released it right away. So
excellent. Far out, man.
That's the word.
That's great.
The word.
So the first thing you have, volume 1 is the book that just came out this past December.
Right.
And it encompasses everything that's available. So you released this comic on the web.
Correct. This was strictly a web comic that I released weekly. It was originally in black and white because I was trying to get it into the newspapers at first, and of course they want just a straight black and white strip.
Right. Clean lines. And
right. 1 out of every 7 is going to be a Sunday color one. So for an entire year, I drew this out and didn't really like the way that it was looking for a book form when I finally came up with the idea to release it as a series. So I spent the second year redoing everything I did from the first year. I went in and digitally colored everything, but everything else is still traditionally hand-drawn. I just color with Photoshop to save myself some time.
Right. Wow.
Everything is originally sketched out, inked out, and then just scanned and colored. So I had to take about 110 strips and redo them all completely, and then resize them and then have them printed. So I contacted a guy that I'm familiar with, his company in Texas, and said, hey, I know I contacted you before, but it was years ago. I don't know if I'm talking to the right person, but this is what I want to do. And he actually emailed me back that same day and said, I remember you. Let's get started. And I'm working with it now. So he prints it out. He keeps in touch. He's very, very, very good about it. So
now, do you do all your own stuff for the comics? So you're drawing it?
Yes, there's absolutely no one here besides me in my basement. So it's
all
literally
you.
Just me sketching it out by hand. I ink it. I sit there and scan it in after I'm done and color it. But I mean, one strip usually takes me with just a few hours from start to finish. So it doesn't take me very long now that I've got the hang of it. After 10 years, I would hope so. But,
practice makes perfect.
Yeah, right?
Or close to it.
Close to it. But outside of that, though, I don't have any digital colorist. I don't have anybody to pencil and ink. I wish sometimes I could see what the difference would be time frame wise if I did. But every time someone reads it, they're like, oh, who do you have for your colorist? Or who do you have? And I say, it's just me. I do everything from start to finish. So that's what takes me so long to release it. But at the same time, it works out because a book every year is also on time. I think
that's great.
Since it happens within a year anyway. So while we're waiting, it's just me writing it.
That's excellent. That's excellent. You're doing it all yourself.
Yeah, right.
And then that way you don't have somebody out there just like in from Kevin Smith's movies where like, well, you're just an inker.
Yeah, right. You're just an inker.
You just trace somebody else's art.
Right. But then that's me being even more hard on myself because I'm like, after like 5 hours and my hand gets shaky and my eye starts twitching, this line outside, okay, I guess he's got long hair now because I just drew a line down his back.
So with you going with the concept of real time and you're saying their hairstyles change, do their hair get, I mean, now we're getting to the nitty gritty of things.
Yeah,
do their hair get a little longer and then they get a haircut again? Or is that too much detail?
No. It is, and it's not at the same time. So, I mean, if you notice, some people have said, hey, why doesn't his hair look the same in this page? And then 30 pages later, there's, it seems like the point is longer, or it seems like you didn't draw it halfway down his back again or something. And I said, well, that's the point. His hair is getting long. And they're like, wait, you're actually drawing his hair longer in each page, just a little bit, by a few centimeters or whatever it is. I said, yeah, there's that. So there is a point in like halfway through the book, I would say, where you start to see one of the characters' bangs start to fall a little bit more forward, getting longer. And then towards the end of the book, he has this whole, not emo specific look.
Right.
But you can see the point of his hair starting to drip down a little bit more, simply because it's getting longer, and it's not spoken about, but
it just happens.
What teenager actually thinks, I think I need to go get a haircut today? It's, hey, I want to see how long I can grow my hair.
Right.
So, there's that point, and then there's a couple other that I don't want to mention so that people can specifically notice later on, like, wait, it's been there that whole time and I didn't notice. But there's another spot in the book where they're just like laying out on the grass looking up at the clouds. And somebody, while I was at one of the conventions promoting this, they had told me, hey, I think you made a mistake in the book. And I said, oh, okay. Well, what was it that you noticed?
Right.
And he said, well, on such and such page, they're sitting in the grass looking at the clouds. And then I noticed that you drew like the shadow of the leaves over his face from the trees, above them. And I said, okay. And they said, well, you didn't draw them in the same place. Like in one panel, the leaves of the shadow of the leaves are on the left side of his face. And then on the next panel, it's completely gone. And I said, well, there's this thing called wind, and it moves things around. And they're like, wait, you're actually putting like different shadows on? I said, yeah, that's all part of the realism. Even though it's a cartoon, I want it to be as realistically placed as possible. So it's things like that you have to kind of look for, but there are very small details that you do look for.
That is, I mean, the attention to detail there of, well, there's wind blowing the tree, so the shadow, not shadow.
You can't see the tree, but you're seeing where the shadow is cast. So I just want people to notice it as they read it, as opposed to me saying, oh, yeah, if you look on page 26, you'll see another wrinkle in his shirt because he suddenly stood up. But it's things like that you have to kind of really read into it. I don't just want it to be something that you flip through and say, oh, that was nice. I want you to read it and look at where like the sunlight hits and you see a shadow or something like that. It's just very small details that I purposely put in, and that's another reason why it does take so long, because I'm not just drawing the same picture over and over again. I'm purposely...
Right. You're not banging out the same cookie cutter character.
Exactly, right.
And otherwise, having them say different words.
Yeah, right.
And then use Photoshop to mirror them so they're on the other side this time.
Right, right.
You're actually giving some detailed thought
right.
to what would happen if this were an animation. You would see the leaves coming in and out.
Exactly.
But because I'm only showing you certain frames of this true happening.
Right. And I mean, that's another thing that I've noticed too, like in realistic strips, or if you were to look at, like, let's say Spider-Man in the newspaper, you know, there's so much detail in such a small frame, but you don't see the effects of what's around him. You see, okay, there's the moon behind him, so it's going to cast a shadow on his suit, but then they show the same picture in the second frame and it's the same shadow. Like, well, what if there's wind moving something in front of him? Why don't you put that there? So obviously that's something that I purposely put in just for the sake of detail, so that people can see that there is a realistic world happening behind them, and it's not just I put the same shadow on the same place because it's 12 o'clock at night and I have to go to bed. I want it to be deep.
So you brought up a point that I've noticed in movies is in a lot of comics, and not in yours, obviously, things only happen within the frame.
Right.
Everything outside the frame doesn't exist. Because I always notice how, here's the bad guy, he's standing here like this, and somebody surprises him from just off frame.
Right.
Didn't you see him coming?
Right.
It's like the characters can't see beyond the walls of their frame,
right.
So somebody can sneak up right here and then punch him out.
Right. It's just like their world exists within one panel, and that's why I'm trying to showcase a lot of other things. Is there's things going on you don't notice. There's people talking. There's things moving, and you just have to let your imagination show you what that is.
That's excellent. So that's something to keep an eye on, and that's another reason to go and pick this up in paperback. And so what I have here is let's talk about Volume 1, okay, which is the entire 8th grade you mentioned.
Yep, it's one full span of their life. So this is the entirety of 8th grade from the day that they start to the day that they finish, roughly 110 or 11 pages or so. Not necessarily the same amount of days as you would go through, but for the sake of the book, obviously there's some days that I wouldn't put in because maybe one day they're just sitting at home sleeping or napping all day. So I'm not going to show that, but the highlights of their year are in the book. So
exactly. Storytelling, and I like to say this, storytelling is about the moments, not the minutes.
Right.
And so you go and you pick your moments.
Moments that are key, that really make up the book, make up their personality and what they're about. So
exactly. And so for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this embedded in another website, just click on the little button down over there that says watch on YouTube. And I've got in the description, I've got the link for the paperback on Amazon. And because it's available in paperback, you can also get it at any bookstore. As Eddy gets more popular with his story, they'll be carried on the shelves. But if you don't see it on the shelf at your local bookstore, I've also included the ISBN number, which is a unique identifier for this specific product among books worldwide. So this is its thumbprint, its fingerprint. You can give any bookstore that you go into this number, and they can special order the book for you, and you can get it. I've also got Eddy's website, his Facebook, his Twitter, and his Instagram down below in the link, so you can connect with Eddy and you can follow him, because this book that just came out is all of 8th grade. But you're saying this happens in real time, so something's coming up in September. What's that?
So if you're like everybody else, hopefully after you graduated 8th grade, you would go into 9th grade, unless you're a prodigy and you just skipped high school altogether. Outside of that, though, there will be a 9th grade, there will be a 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then so on. It's not necessarily a spoiler as how long is it going to take for the next one to come out, or are we going to skip something in between? So without giving too much away, every year there will be something new, and maybe something in between. As of right now, the title of the second one, which I'll just go ahead and give away since it's no surprise, it is freshman year.
Spoiler, you heard it here first in ODNT Spotlight.
Now, things you can expect from freshman year. What did you go through? Probably being bullied for being a freshman. Probably a lot of pranks. Probably feeling a lot of authority as you're now in high school, and maybe a little bit of rebellion and things like that. Algebra, which everybody usually absolutely hates, myself included, unless I have to. But other than that, basically just kind of go off of what you went through in high school, or if you're not in high school yet, things that you've been being told of. There are going to be a lot more jokes, but it is going to be a more serious type of content, since high school, just like any form of education, is not necessarily something that you should just joke around with and it's all a party. It is some of the most important years of your life. And it also makes up who you're going to meet, who you want to be, and where your life might go from there. So there is going to be, like I said, a lot of jokes, but you've already met the characters for a year now. You know their personalities. So you're going to get to see how they experience high school and their friends and what they go through and how they go through it.
Right.
Obviously, a few of the characters are just jokesters, so they may not take it as seriously, but there are some that do, and they just want to succeed and excel. And who knows, maybe there's going to be some little bit of tension in between. If one of them is more serious and the other just wants to goof off. There's new teachers, obviously. The first book featured a lot of cameos of people that I know specifically that want to be included in it. So you might not notice who that is, but I do.
All your friends said, I want to be in your comic.
Well, there is actually a acknowledgement in the back, and everyone is thanked by name. But in the back of the book, much like a credits in a movie, you see a little bit of a picture window with their face on it of who they were. And I don't necessarily put this person is this name, but
right.
There is a credit section where everyone who asked to be featured is, and their character is there.
Nice.
So as of right now, obviously, not a lot of people, especially if you're in a public school, transfer from 8th grade to the 9th grade, and you go to maybe the specific school that they require. So some of the characters might return, some might not, since who knows, since there's things going on outside the book, maybe they went to a different school.
Right.
Or maybe you'll see them in a different book altogether, and you'll find out why they didn't appear in that. But there's a lot intentionally left out so that you can not necessarily forget about it, but focus more on things and then be more surprised when you do see them. Or maybe they'll just be a background character walking around in the background. So again, fine detail.
Interesting. And I've got, real quick here, one of your promo things.
Yep.
To also show some of your humor here. So the hall won't monitor itself.
There you go.
I like the guy sitting in his box.
Yep. And he is actually featured in the first book. Very, very serious about his job. A personal.
It shows.
Yeah, personal friend of mine who is very much serious in his own life, but knows how to have a lot of fun. And I wanted him to be featured in some way. So he basically gave me the idea of, well, can I be like a cop or something? And I said, even better, what if you're the hall monitor? Perfect, let's do it. But I want to be a jerk. And I'm like, okay, I can make that happen. So I wanted him to be someone that comes into the second book. And another friend gave me the idea of, let's make him even more of just the personality that he is, and let's have him like patrolling, and we'll just sit him in a box outside the lockers, and it's dressed up like a police car.
I love it.
So
it looks like a freshman year is just going to be more bigger and better and more exciting.
Bigger and better. That's right.
And then, so you've also got a short story
that's
coming out.
Right.
And that's called, what is that called?
It's called Search for the Red Cap. And if that doesn't make a lot of sense at first, once you read the book, you'll see one of the characters always wears a red beanie cap. And why he does, a lot of people have looked at it and just thought that's part of the, costume, so to speak. That's just, some people always wear glasses, some people always wear hats. But that is significant. I won't tell you exactly why, but if you do pick up the book, you will find out towards the end why he wears it and why it's so important that he goes and finds it and how it got lost to begin with.
More attention to detail.
That's right. And this is something that I didn't originally plan for, but again, I had the idea to do this, and I'm so glad that I put it into effect. But Search for the Red Cap is not only just finding what happened to his cap, because that would, I think, be a very boring story if you just go out looking for something. So in the beginning of the story, and it will be a very short story. It's not meant to be nearly as thick as this first book. But the story starts out with them just looking, and then in a very, I think, hilarious way of them just getting into trouble, all of the original ideas from my very first high school comic come into play. So it's another reboot. I'm obviously not doing the same story.
Right.
In the same way, as they're looking for this cap, they get hungry, they see a fast food restaurant. So they stop, and I'll just leave it at that for now. But if you know anything about the old strips, or if you went to school with me back then, you'll know what's coming up. And if you go on Facebook, a lot of older pictures that you can tell have been redone completely. And hopefully after about 14 years now, they look much better, I think.
Right, well, I've got, actually, if you give me a second here.
Yeah, you can pull one up, go ahead.
I've got, let's see if I can even pull that up. I'm on the Facebook, so on your Facebook page you have it. I can't seem to grab that picture. It won't let me save that one. But
should be able to save it on there.
There it is. Save as attached. So give me one more second here, and we'll be able to bring it up here where we show your before 2002 and after 2016. So let me add that real quick here.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
It's the house.
That's perfect. That's the one I was going.
Yep, that's the perfect one. So we've got.
So if you look at the top left corner there, that is my very embarrassing house, or haunted house, if you will. But basically, when I was writing this story and I got out of the original idea and I was doing this kind of far-out adventure where they time travel, this house means a lot. I'll go ahead and just give a little bit of a spoiler of it. But inside this house, they find something that basically changes the story altogether, where they drift off into something entirely different. The original story featured a time machine and time travel, and I won't tell you necessarily what happens in the house, but
got to read the book.
Yeah, right. But they do find something in the house that goes back to the original comics, and they do have this far-out adventure, I'll just say, and it kind of veers off the track a little bit while they're looking for this cap, but the cap doesn't actually go away. It's not a separate side story that just ignores that. But only two of the characters go off on this trip while the others are still looking for the cap. So basically what will happen is you'll have two stories in one, and they both link the first and second book. So there's a lot in between, but nothing too difficult to really understand. You just have to follow it. But basically, as they're starting out looking for the cap, they stop for food. Something happens there. They meet someone else who looks very familiar, and I'll just leave it at that. And it's not explained immediately, but basically there are other character cameos that wouldn't normally appear in the story, and how they appear and what this house means and where this far-out adventure takes them all kind of coincide together, and then it ends where the second book begins.
Very nice. And we can see from the artwork here the improvement you've made over the years.
That one took a little bit of time. The first one I think I sketched up while the teacher went to get something out of their office in about 5 minutes. This new house took me more like 5 hours.
Yeah, you were under a deadline for the first one.
I was.
That's still far better than I could have done.
Well, practice.
Yeah. My stick figure people look like stick figure people drew them.
I would still read it.
So Search for the Red Cap is a bridge story between the 8th grade, and then you said it ends and pretty much brings you right into the beginning of freshman year.
Correct. So it's not necessary to read this short story, but if you don't, you'll basically just see the end of the first book. Oh, he lost his cap, and in the second book, he got it back. Right. So you don't have to. It's almost like...
But if you want to know what happened...
That's right, because it won't be spoken of after that, since it's not going to be like, hey, remember when we did this? It's just going to be the second book.
Remember the haunted house time-traveling far-out adventure we had?
Right. I mean, maybe. We'll see. And if you do read it and that comes up and you'll think, wait a minute, I didn't see that in the first book. There is an in-between. So not 1.5 or anything. There is just a 1, a 2, and then something in between. So
Excellent. So you also have, I was looking through on your Facebook and also on the Go Comics thing, you've got a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you started putting up.
So again, back in the original comic strips back in high school, I did like the breaking of the fourth wall. I did like knowing that they knew they were characters, but without actually mentioning it, where they would speak directly to the audience. And a lot of other strips do it, just not as much. Garfield did it, I think, maybe just a couple of times, and then it just dropped off as if it never existed. So if I did it, I wanted it to continue. And that was something that I really had a hard time deciding. Do I want to include it? How would I do it? If it's that real of a world, how do they even know that they're a character? But someone gave me the idea, and people are always throwing me ideas, and some I like and some just don't make a lot of sense. But who did as they were reading it, and they said, "Hey, are you in the comic?" And I said, "Well, why would I be in the comic?" And they said, "Well, you put everyone else in. Is your character in it?" And I said, "No, if I was in it, I would be, quote unquote, like the dad. They would know that I'm the character, and they would know specifically who I am, and they would just give me grief because the annoying little kid in the background saying, hey, 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 can you do this? Can you do that?" And just something that I even didn't really want to attempt because I don't know what I would look like if I drew myself. And I probably wouldn't do a very good job of it anyway. People wouldn't know it's me. But I went ahead and gave it a shot, and I liked the way it turned out. I didn't think it turned out necessarily exactly like me, but the personality of myself is in it, and all of the characters have a little bit of my own personality in them. So the rest I just put into this other character that right away, I think from reading that little behind the scenes strip, you know is me because I'm the one drawing them on the table with them looking behind me.
Right, giving you direction. Now make me do this. And
right. And I like that idea because it's a little bit of a side note altogether, and it's fun to just kind of relax a little bit and think, okay, these characters have a story, they have parents, they have a beginning, but they also have someone who made all of that, and they are aware of it. They just don't necessarily always mention it. So it's just kind of an unmentioned, fun little strip background. But behind the scenes was something that I wanted to do to make it even more realistic, where just like in movies, they're playing out this entire long hour or two or however long it is story, and then they have their own life beyond that. So if you let your imagination take that with you too, you see this kind of act in these books that they're playing, but in the meantime they're doing something completely different in the background, whether that's posing for a picture that I post, or they're like on the cover. That was something that I didn't want to specifically make an 8th grade scene. I wanted you to immediately see the cover and think, okay, they know their characters, so let's see if they actually mention that in the book. So I put myself on the cover. You can see me. Those are actual sketches that I did of the characters, and then they're looking down over my shoulder as if they know what's coming next. So,
and this is on the cover of the Volume 1 Far Out?
Yep, if you look at the cover where I'm drawing on the pads of paper, again, a little bit of a fine detail to notice. But
there it is.
Yeah, if you look at all of the sketches that are on the table, those are all actual sketches that were turned into the panels of the book. So all of those sketches, I think there's 4 there, are actual panels in the book that were later completed, colored, and so on. So those are basically original sketches of panels that are in the book. So they're not just random sketches that I made. If you look at those pictures and say, wait a minute, I saw that on page so-and-so.
You'll see it. That's so cool. I love that stuff. Boy, the attention to detail is just blowing my mind. That is amazing. And you have to keep all that in and get it down and go, okay, here's what I'm doing and here's why, and no one's going to notice.
Right. And it's basically for me to know and everyone else to find out. And that much more enjoyable when people do, because they actually look at it and they're like, wait a minute, on that cover you have this page. And I'm like, how long?
Somebody's getting it.
Yep, the gears are turning.
Excellent. So you've got, I think I saw a date, September 9th, scheduled for the start of freshman year?
Right. So these dates are not just randomly made. They're not dates that I just come up with and say, okay, I think I'll be done by then. These are the actual first day of public schools. Now, obviously, not every school follows the same date, but
it's close.
Yeah, but everything that happens within these books are systematic of a real life and real time schedule. So there's the reason that there's 110 pages in the book, because if you follow 110 pages of a normal school year, or 110 days rather of a normal school year, there's days off, there's weekends, there are holidays, and there might be field trips in between that haven't been shown. So 110 pages is not just a randomly made up number. It's a set amount of days following a normal school schedule.
It's more of your attention to super specific detail.
In the same way, September 9th is the official first day of school for most public schools.
Right.
So people can actually pick it up the day school starts. And same way, there are things that will happen on certain days of the week. If it's released online first, which I usually do, there might be a special Columbus Day strip because it's Columbus Day.
That's exciting. I love that. So Volume 1 of Far Out is now out.
It is.
And it's available in any bookstore. If it's not on the shelf and you wander in and you want to pick this up for Eddy Decker's first printed volume of the entire 8th grade, you can take the ISBN number that I have listed down below for you, and you can get it in any bookstore. So that is all the questions I had for you. And is there anything else before we end this interview that you would like people to know about you or the book?
Well, there is something
next?
I'd like to, a little bit of a shout out to all the readers. So no matter where you are, what state, obviously you can pick it up in your local store. Just give them the number like you said. But I would like to continue these cameos. And obviously I only have so many friends. So
I'll take a cameo.
There you go. So what I'd like to do, and it's something that I've done at conventions and comic book stores around, I like it to be for the readers and for the fans, and I don't just want to include some random person. I like to really include certain people that obviously really enjoy it. So there have been a few people, few kids, few parents that, I've asked, would you like to be in the second book? And they said, well, how would you do that? Let's take a picture together so I can have your face, and then we'll add you in as a character. So there is a teaser picture on the social media pages, and it's basically a mock picture of the red carpet awards for the Oscars when all of the celebrities took a selfie together.
Right.
And there are obviously a lot of characters that you don't know, and they're not just random kids. Those are actually people that asked or I wanted to be in the book because either they purchased a copy, they followed me on social media. So a lot of those characters are people that I met that I personally don't know, but I would like to at least give them a little bit of a shout out by making them a character and putting them into the book. So if anyone would like that, the only thing that I ask is just that you follow it, or if at the very least, mention it to your friends. Pick up a copy wherever you are. It obviously helps in helping me produce the second book, since this is all entirely independent. I do not have anyone else helping me with this. And the only way I can keep making this is by the readers that help promote it. So as thanks, I would gladly put you in as a side character, a new friend, a teacher. The only thing that you would have to do, like I said, is just let me know what you would like to be, whether that's a certain character or a certain person, or maybe you want to be the bully. Maybe you want to be the person who throws the pie or something like that. Obviously, you can just let me know on social media. You could email me as well. But probably just leaving me a message would be the best way.
Yeah, so I've got your Facebook link here. So yeah, Facebook messaging and connect with you on Facebook, best way?
That would be the best way. And then just attach a photo so that I know who's going to be in it. And obviously, I will make sure that you are credited the proper way. I would like to do, again, the little bit of cameos in the book. So the people that you see in the background, they all are someone, whether they have history. I've met. Yep, they are a real person. The only person who is not a person that I could say has no meaning is there is a random horse in the first book. And I don't know horses that would actually do that. So that one was made up. But all the people,
yeah. I haven't been friended by a horse yet on Facebook.
That's right.
Either.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone that is in the book has some meaning, and I don't just, put somebody in without a meaning to it. So everybody is important in it, whether you see them again or not.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Eddy, for joining us on ODNT, where we can shine the spotlight on you and your far out adventures.
Very good.
That's excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down the interview. Don't hang up just yet. I'll come back chat with you for a couple more minutes.
Sure.
So we just spoke with Eddy Decker, writer and artist of the Far Out collection, and his first book is out, which encompasses the entire 8th grade. And you can pick it up now. I've got the link down below here if you want to get it on Amazon, or if you want to support your local bookstore, you can walk in there. I've got the ISBN number that they can then use to order it for you as a special order. Any bookstore would love to do that because they love to have your support, and Eddy would also love to have your support so we can keep going with freshman year coming up September 9th. And beyond. So we're going to do at least the next 4 years and probably into college. And when they have kids, we'll start over again with them in preschool. So, hey, this thing can go on forever. And it's going to be great because, you know, talking with Eddy and the attention to detail that he has, and he has the humor and the attention to detail in this story, it's the complete package. So I definitely highly suggest you go pick this up, check it out online, and, you know, see what he's done and realize that you got to have this thing in physical form, because that's the best way to experience and enjoy comics and stories, is you have it in your hand. So once again, I am Steve DeWinder for ODNT Spotlight. Thank you for joining me. Hey, thanks to all our subscribers. I love all you guys. We're growing fast with this channel. We have other interviews with other artists, musicians, writers, more comic book people, hopefully some actors and other people along. So thanks a lot for watching. Have yourself a great day. Ciao.